So there's a lot of really cool things happening with the photography capabilities on the iPhone 17 Pro, and there's some upgrades that are flying under the radar that I want to share with you today. And big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. We'll talk about them a little bit later on. So welcome to another episode of Photographer vs. Smartphone, where I take my 10 years of photography experience, apply it to the latest smartphone cameras, and break down what is actually happening with these new devices. And today we're going to analyze the three cameras on the 17 Pro and answer three main questions by the end of the video. The first is, what about this camera is marketing hype and what's actually worth it? The second thing is, how much of an improvement is the 17 Pro versus the 16 Pro? And finally, who is this smartphone best for? But with that intro out of the way, let's get into it. The first thing that's interesting about this review of the camera on the 17 Pro is that I actually already kind of reviewed it a little bit in the video I made about the iPhone Air. If you haven't seen that video, definitely check it out. There's a lot of overlapping information. And speaking of phone comparisons, if you want to see me compare this to the Pixel 10 Pro by Google, just let me know in the comments. I'm most likely going to make that video this month. But anyways, in the iPhone Air video, I compared it to the 17 Pro and made a pretty bold statement that the iPhone Air had the best looking iPhone photos I'd ever seen. Now, the iPhone Air could only capture JPEG images and it didn't have an ultra wide camera, but there was clearly something happening with the imaging processing pipeline going on with the iPhone Air. There were improvements to it, and those improvements translate over to the iPhone 17 Pro as well. In my initial testing, I had the same initial reaction as I did with the iPhone Air. I was like, wow, these are definitely the best looking iPhone photos I've made. They're a little bit sharper, they're a little bit more contrasty, it seems like these are less digital, and I was very happy with the initial images. But I wanted to make sure that this just wasn't new phone bias, so I did some comparisons, not to this phone. Where's my actual phone? I did some comparisons to the 16 Pro and saw basically the exact same thing I saw in the iPhone Air comparison. When you compare the HEIC formatted photos, which is essentially JPEG images, from the 17 to the 16 Pro, you'll notice the 17 Pro images are just a little bit more contrasty. There's a better control over the highlight areas, which are the bright areas, and the shadow areas, which are the dark areas. And also we have a little bit less of this digitized look. The images look sharper and it's more of a natural sharpness when you zoom in. The same thing is apparent when you look at the photos in the ultra wide lens from the 17 to the 16 Pro. The 17 Pro is just a little bit more contrasty once again, and we have less of this digitized look. The images are processed much better. I wanted to do a raw file test between the two cameras because that is one of the biggest perks to the Pro. Being able to shoot in raw files, removing a lot of that digitization and computational photography out of the photos and get all the data that you can. Now, when I compared the raw files side by side with the standard lens as well as the ultra wide lens, there was a slight uptick in the contrast on these photos. I did think the iPhone 17 Pro images looked a little bit better, but it wasn't as dramatic of a change as the JPEG images, which is to be expected because these are raw files, they're more data based. But I did think the raw files on the 17 Pro for the standard as well as the ultra wide lens did look a little bit better. Now, I did notice something really interesting when it came to editing these raw files. With one of these presets applied to both photos, you'll notice the iPhone 16 Pro images have more of this magenta cast to them. There's this slight purple hue which is not present in the 17 Pro photos, even though both images were made the exact same way. And this change was most apparent in the ultra wide lens, but it was also apparent in the standard lens as well. It wasn't as strong, but when you apply this preset, the 16 Pro image does have a little bit more of a magenta look, and the colors are much more natural from the 17 Pro. So it's safe to say that there is a slight improvement from the 16 Pro to the 17 Pro. Now, here's the thing, this improvement is something that I notice because I look at photos every single day. This has been my job for 10 years, but if you're someone who's a little bit more of a casual user, I don't know if you're going to notice these differences as much. These differences are very technical and they are great improvements for people trying to make the most out of their iPhone, but for the casual user, it's kind of like splitting hairs. It's not worth it to just run out and upgrade your phone for these improvements, in my opinion. Now, with that being said, if you're someone who has, say, a 13 Pro or an older iPhone Pro model and you make a jump to the 17 Pro, you will definitely see some improvements when it comes to how your images look. There's going to be more of a natural look between your highlights and shadows. Your images are going to look sharper when you zoom in, and color rendering and detail is just going to be a little bit better. Honestly, you can still get away with a pretty old iPhone, but the further back you go, obviously, the more of a noticeable increase you're going to see when you start using the 17 Pro. Now, speaking of noticeable improvements, the biggest one to the 17 Pro is this improved telephoto lens. This telephoto lens now shoots at around a 100mm equivalent, which in my opinion is a much more natural focal length. It's a real telephoto, and if you're used to making telephoto images, say on a mirrorless camera, you're going to find yourself feeling like these images look more of like what you'd expect from a professional camera. Also, because the telephoto is now 48 megapixels, you have an improvement to resolution, and with that improved processing, these images look night and day better versus the telephoto images on the 16 Pro. I don't really have to get into it. It's obvious they look better, and in my opinion, this is now the first iPhone where telephoto is something I would even consider using. In the past, anytime I talk about iPhones, I talk about how useless the telephoto feature is. With this improvement to 48 megapixels, you can finally actually use this and get something worthwhile from the telephoto lens, which is a big improvement and really cool. Is it something that you need to run out and pick up the new phone for? Probably not, but I don't know. It does live up to the marketing hype. Now, all that stuff is cool, but like I said, it's nothing that I think you should run out and upgrade your phone for. The feature on the 17 Pro, as well as the iPhone Air and the iPhone 17, that I do think is worth the upgrade if you do this, is the new selfie camera. If you're someone who has complained in the last 5 or 6 years about how bad you look in iPhone selfies, you're one of these people who uses the Snapchat camera or your Instagram camera to make selfies because you swear it looks better, you are going to love the new selfie camera on the 17 Pro, the 17, and the iPhone Air. In my iPhone Air video, I talked about how much I like this. I showed comparisons to my 16 Pro. The images have much more control of the highlights and shadows. They're more naturally contrasty. There's less of this digitization look. And most importantly, there appears to be an improvement in how colors are processed. It looks like these selfies have a more natural look to them. And I think most people will be very happy and notice an almost immediate difference with using the selfie camera on the 17, 17 Pro, and iPhone Air. And the introduction of center stage is really cool as well. The ability to get vertical as well as horizontal images and have images that personally I think look like they could have been made from a front-facing camera on an iPhone is just a win overall. So that right there is everything I noticed in testing on the 17 Pro from a overly technical photography perspective, but there's a few final thoughts that I have that are more opinion-based, and we do have to answer those questions I brought up at the beginning of the video. But before we do that, I want to thank today's sponsor, Squarespace. So you see this photo right here? This photo was made with an iPhone, and it was in my last book, and I sold it as a print. That same strategy can be applied to anyone using their iPhone to create art and share it online. If you're sharing your artwork and you don't have a side hustle and a way to make money from it, you're just missing out on a huge opportunity. And that's where today's sponsor, Squarespace, comes into play. Here's how you do it. First, you'll build a website on Squarespace by going to squarespace.com/EvanRamp to start a free trial, and when you're ready to sign up, you can use code EvanRamp to save 10%. Now, you can build your own site using one of Squarespace's drag and drop templates, which are amazing, or you can just copy my website, evanramp.com. I have a video linked in the description down below under a tab called Website Resources where I show you how to do that. Then from there, you just create your print or your product and you load it into your site. Don't worry, I have a video on the channel showing you exactly how to do that as well. It's linked under the Website Resources tab. Then finally, anytime you post on social media, just create a repeatable strategy to let people know this product exists. Once again, don't worry, I have a video breaking down that strategy. It's linked under the Website Resources tab. Now, you might not want to sell prints. Maybe you want to sell books like me. Maybe you want to sell digital products like presets. Maybe you want to sell a course or a guide, or you want to have some type of newsletter. Squarespace allows you to to do all of that. And I know what you're thinking, making money online sounds complicated, but Squarespace makes it simple with things like Squarespace Payments, which allow you to run all your payment processing through your Squarespace site so you don't need a third party to begin making money with your side hustle. And Squarespace is dedicated to making it easier than ever to run and build a website with tools like Blueprint AI, which can literally help you design your site and make it something custom and personal to you. Having a professional looking website built on Squarespace is a no-brainer for anyone sharing their creative work to social media. So start building that side hustle today by going to squarespace.com/EvanRamp to start a free trial. And when you're ready to sign up, use code EvanRamp to save 10% at checkout. Big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. So was there any marketing hype on the 17 Pro? For probably the first time ever, I got this phone, used it, and it lived up to everything I expected. The selfies are a lot better. The telephoto lens is definitely an improvement, and this silver colorway, I personally think it looks really nice. The only marketing hype you could say is that orange colorway. When these first got announced, my knee-jerk reaction was to get the orange one, and then I thought for a second, do I really want an orange phone for the next year? I didn't do it, and it's kind of funny seeing people come to the same realization, so maybe go check out the colors in person, but overall, this phone really lived up to its expectations that I had for it. Now, should you upgrade from the 16 Pro to the 17 Pro? There's only two people who I could really see running out to get an upgrade from the 16 Pro to the 17 Pro, and that is anyone who is very technical like me. Maybe you're someone who uses your iPhone for photos for work and you want the best quality possible. You will see some noticeable, even though they're minor, improvements to your photos with an upgrade. And if you're someone who does a lot of selfies and you want higher quality selfie images, you'll definitely see an upgrade with the 17 Pro. And that leads us to our final question of who is the iPhone 17 Pro best suited for? This is a little bit of a complicated question because if you're someone who wants that new selfie camera, you don't have to buy this. You can buy the Air, you can buy the 17, and you still get that improvement. If you're someone who has a very old iPhone, yes, jumping to this will be a big improvement, but so will the 17, and even elements of the Air are huge improvements from previous iPhones. The 17 Pro feels like, to me, a phone designed for very technical, more professional people who have the 16 Pro and they want those slight upgrades because those are the people who are actually going to notice those changes and potentially actually use them. I don't think casual users are going to use a 8 times zoom telephoto lens to get a 100mm focal length and shoot a RAW file and really see the benefits of that. It seems like the 17 Pro is really, on a technical level, made for people who are already using this device as a professional tool, and anyone who's not using it like that is going to upgrade just for the aesthetics and the simple fact of being able to say they have a new phone. I personally do think the redesign is pretty cool. It feels a little bit cheap to me, but it is nice to see something different from Apple, and I think that some of the video improvements on the 17 Pro, which I'm not going to cover in this video, could lead to a lot of big things in the future when it comes to filmmaking and using iPhones as more cinematic and video devices. But that's a topic for another day. Let me know your thoughts on all this in the comments. Remember, if you want me to review this compared to the Google Pixel 10 Pro, drop that in the comments as well. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you are not yet. I'll catch y'all in the next video.